And now going through the pregnancy and realizing, all the fears and hopes and dreams that we have, baby comes out and you knew right away that he was a Down syndrome child.
We knew when he was born. We knew nothing about when I was carrying him. We were expecting a fully 100% natural birth, and it was a natural birth, but we were not expecting extenuating circumstances at all. So when he was born, focus shifted immediately. Everybody in the delivery room froze and then kicked back into action and moved forward. But from that first frozen moment in time, that was when I first realized life was going to be different than what I expected. So when he was born, there was absolutely nothing to prepare me. I had no idea. And honestly, the first 6 months of his entire life were a blur.
Welcome to the Digital Legacy Podcast, where we talk about death and dying in the digital age. If you ever asked, how do I protect myself and those I love if something unexpected happened to me? You're in the right place. I'm your host, Niki Weiss, and together we'll explore how to protect yourself in a world where both your physical and digital legacy leave a lasting impact. And welcome back to another episode of the Digital Legacy Podcast, where we talk about death and dying in the digital age. My guest today is Julie Hoffman-Hogan. And Julie, you're a financial advisor, but you have a special twist because not just as a financial advisor, but personally, you have a special needs adult child. And that special needs child, you have a special plan in place for him as well. So welcome to the show, and please tell us how you got here today.
Thank you very much for having me, Niki. It is a pleasure and an honor to be on your podcast. I love what you stand for and what your goals are. I think we've discussed that previously, and I have such admiration for what you're doing. So thank you for doing that. I'm a planner, financial advisor, and I started in this business actually late in life. I came into it as a change of career. I had been working for other people to protect other companies in risk management, and decided that what I really wanted to do was being able to help people and their families, and to continue to try to help as many people as possible. So that's how I ended up as a financial planner. Many years ago, because my son is now 33 years old, I ended up having a son, and you're going to get to do all kinds of math here, because I ended up having a son when I was 22 years old with Down syndrome. I don't know if you have any idea what that is like, but that is pretty life-changing. It's a little devastating. You really honestly have to mourn the son that you were expected to have, to be able to move forward in a positive way with your son that he is now.
And you were 22. So you're a young mother, let's just take that, just the thought of a young mother. And now going through the pregnancy and realizing, all the fears and hopes and dreams that we have, baby comes out and you knew right away that he was a Down syndrome child.
We knew when he was born. We knew nothing about when I was carrying him. We were expecting a fully 100% natural birth, and it was a natural birth, but we were not expecting extenuating circumstances at all. So when he was born, focus shifted immediately. Everybody in the delivery room froze and then kicked back into action and moved forward. But from that first frozen moment in time, that was when I first realized life was going to be different than what I expected. So we've kind of moved forward from there, and it has evolved over the years many times. So, yes.
Planning. The greatest lesson there is, what do they say? We plan and God laughs, or how do you make God laugh? It's like, tell him your plan.
That is true. Every time you think you've got something set up, it changes. So, which brings us to our conversation today. And that's kind of what we're talking about, is making sure to plan for those changes. making sure to have plans in place. I know that you do a lot of that, Niki, with your business. And so when it comes to special needs planning, it's that much more important. I've had a plan in place for Derek since he was, elementary school. And you kind of learn what needs to happen along the way. You need to do, you're doing all your specialists and you're doing all of your doctor's visits and you're doing everything else. But in addition to that, you're also trying to think down the line and, okay, what if something happens to me? How will he be taken care of? Who will take care of him? What's going to happen? So in a lot of ways, it's like you give birth to an old person.
I just want to take a pause here because you and I are around the same age. Our kids are the same age. I have a 33-year-old child too. And when they were little, we didn't use the word special needs, or I wasn't that familiar with it. Was that something that was handed to you when they put Derek in your arms?
No. When they gave him to me, they said, "This is your son. He's retarded."
They used the word retarded.
They used the word retarded, which felt like such a slap in the face to me.
So this is just so everyone knows, this is 1993.
Yeah.
92. So 92.
Yeah, he'll be 34 very shortly. So okay. Yes. It was quite a shock. Honestly, I either your son has Down syndrome. And I'm like,
did you know what that was at 22?
No. What is that? I
don't think they start testing until they won't test women.
So they had tested for what they used then was the alpha fetal protein test. And if it was negative or high, one or the other, they used that and and they still use it actually.
For a 22-year-old? Because I thought they had more tests like over 30 or over 35 or something.
They have a lot of them then, but at the time, that was part of the protocol. But AFP was just something that you took to see whether or not there were any any problems or malfunctions with the baby, any genetic abnormalities. And they do that routinely. It didn't reveal anything at the time. So when he was born, there was absolutely nothing to prepare me. I had no idea. And honestly, the first 6 months of his entire life were a blur. I don't remember anything that happened. I mean, I do and I don't. I had, he is a second son. So I had a 17-month-old at the same time. So I was dealing with my 17-month-old. My husband was overseas in the Gulf War. So I was a 17-month-old and a Down syndrome baby all on my own trying to figure it out. And I had therapists coming into the home 3 or 4 times a week. And we were doing physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy as a newborn. I mean,
as a 22-year-old mom with 2 kids, I'm thinking of most 22-year-olds now that
I couldn't even imagine any of my kids having babies at 22.
They can barely do.
God, I haven't had to.
Right. Wow.
But yeah, so I mean, you learn, you live and you learn, right? You grow. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. I think that's a saying somewhere along the way.
Yeah.
And people will tell you that all the time when you have a baby with Down syndrome. Oh, what doesn't kill you will make you stronger. Well, I must be Hercules. And so must every other mom with a special needs child or extenuating circumstances. That's the whole thing, is that you never know what's going on in somebody else's life unless you've walked a mile in their shoes. So I always try to remember that when I'm standing in line very impatiently at the grocery store or anywhere else, that everybody in that place has something going on that you don't know what it is.
So he was in elementary school. So you're in your early 30s or late 20s, when you realized, when you started thinking
how to plan.
Again, one of those extraordinary, I don't know how many. I talked to 50, 60, 70-year-olds that still don't have a plan. So here you are. I'm just taking a moment and just honoring you. You small children, one special needs child. You're trying to make it with, as a married single woman, because your husband is military and now,
deployed.
right? And
Yeah.
trying to think about him too, right? What did
Well,
you ever
and
talk
that was
about?
part of, right? That's part of it because he was deployed at the time. He was in the Gulf War and nobody knew what was going to be happening. And he came home from the Gulf War and then left 6 months later and went to Okinawa. So he was in Okinawa for a point in time. So, yeah. So the early years were tough. Just trying to get a handle on things. And then we moved to Massachusetts specifically because they had the best, at the time, they had the best special needs opportunities for your children of any state in the union. So we moved here so that we would have access to all of those advances. And I think that was a godsend. Being able to be here and have early intervention and have all of those options and those therapists and everybody who were willing to come to your home, because it was tough getting everybody in and out. But having somebody in the military also helped urge me along to learn to know that I had to plan, right? Whatever we had to do, we had to plan for the future because he might not have come home. He might not have, so all of those things were in place relatively early. But getting into middle school and you start realizing how much different things were going to be it was huge. So starting to research and starting to put things into place and knowing that you have to, at some point, declare your child incompetent, and assume guardianship of them or conservatorship. That's the fun word. Trying to get them so that you have not control of them, but you are able to continue their care. Because after 18, the medical fields, no one has to talk to you anymore. You're not legally.
Talk more about that.
So when your child transitions to adulthood, even if they're special needs or whatever, if they're 18, HIPAA violations, HIPAA prohibits you having communication with the doctors unless your child is standing right there.
But Derek's low functioning, and there's different, right? So there's
Doesn't
different.
even matter. It does not matter unless you have legal guardianship or conservatorship or are the healthcare proxy. You do not get access to their medical records after they're 18.
So you knew that you had to go through that legal procedure.
Yes, you have to undergo that. And as does anyone who is concerned about their child's mental capacity for understanding and knowing what needs to happen. That is their role as a parent or guardian to do those things. So you not only are setting up your guardianship, but your spouse actually can't be their guardian because they have to be their adult foster care provider.
So you're just trying to navigate through all the
you try to navigate
governmental buckets that will.
Exactly. You have to do all
take care of your child just as a parent. You have to. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So there's a lot that goes into everything. You don't know until you know. So my goal would be to make sure that everyone knows about it beforehand. So when they're approaching 16 years old, you want to start looking into guardianship, conservatorship, whatever you think needs to happen. You need to be focusing on what needs to happen next, which is what you do all the time. You're preparing for people. Yes, you're preparing for life or for death while they're living. And I'm preparing for death not only in my case, but also in my son's case, my spouse's case, and then who would take on those needs, because I had to appoint a secondary guardian in case there was something that happened to me. If you don't do it at the time that that guardianship is being taken, or when you're assuming guardianship, I guess I should say, then you have to go back to court and do it all over again once if you've passed. So
time, money, and emotional stress.
Right. So making sure that that is put into place when you do the original means that you have to have those conversations with, if they have siblings, or with your sisters, or with your brothers, whomever you're appointing as a secondary guardian. So it gets complicated early.
It's super complicated. So you started the process when he was in elementary school, and then you had to revisit it again when he turned 18, and now he's 33. And what does it look like for you?
So now he's 33, and I just shared, and it is something that's different for everyone, but I just we've been noticing some abnormalities in his behavior, so we took him back to the doctors again. We're at the doctors a lot. All of our doctors, they all know us by name. But regardless, we finally got in to see a neurologist who confirmed some of our worst fears, and it's possible that he is already starting to deal with some early onset Alzheimer's, which changes everything once again, because the care plan we previously had put into place, he's a healthy individual who was young and vibrant and doing all of his own things and able to spend time alone. And he's not able to do those anymore. So changing and creating a new plan is where we're at right now. And we're in the middle of that. So trying to see we're trying to get the results so that we can make informed decisions. So
you have such like a personal story, Julie, and I just want to honor it. And at the same time, you also have the professional whereabout and, understand the documentation and what to start planning for. How does one, what are the options? And I think one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the podcast is they call it special needs trust. I guess a lot of people don't know about that. So I know that you wanted to share with us. Is that a document that you have set up currently for Derek?
So I originally had set up a living will for Derek that included a letter of intent, which a letter of intent it's very similar in the fact that it covers everything that you would cover in your living will. But in addition to that, you add in what his routines are, what his medical history is, all of his medications, all of his behavioral support, what does he need to survive and do his best in. You add in the likes and the dislikes, you add in all of the things that make Derek able to function on a day-to-day basis. And without determining how to have him function on a daily basis, I'm just going to have to pick up from scratch. So it's really important, and it's like writing a love letter to the future guardian or the future parent or the future caregiver, but it acts as a legal basis for how they can move forward and what steps they will need to take. So having that as part of a living will, I have to change the trust is basically what's happening.
Because of the diagnosis.
Because of the
diagnosis. And again, it's from an infant to a child to a teenager to a young adult, and now at 33.
Yes.
And this could go on for decades. Yes,
it could go on for decades because he is healthy and able to. He physically right now is able to thrive. Mentally, we're just reversing. So we have to find that happy place. And the caregivers who I originally, his daughter and his sister and his younger brother were kind of at odds and fighting over who got to take care of him. I'm imagining this would be changing drastically.
Because the level of care he's going to need, and the length of time he's going to need it. So, what new documentation does your family need to be considering?
So you need to find and appoint a trustee. My daughter is his successor guardian. If anything happens to me, my daughter is his guardian named as his guardian and successor. But I will have to revisit that with her, make sure she is still okay with that. We need to review his financial plan to make sure that I have enough life insurance and my husband has enough life insurance to be able to leave those in an irrevocable trust with him as the beneficiary of the trust. He himself cannot be named. He cannot have over $2,000 of assets in his name, or he will receive no benefits from the state or the federal government.
And you know, that's like a whole nother conversation that people don't realize, right? Is that if someone's receiving, and this might be opening up a can of worms, but if someone's receiving federal support and then they come into an inheritance, that inheritance, if it's not documented correctly, could impact the support that they're getting from the government. Like they could lose their Social 100%. Security.
Yeah.
And people don't realize that.
Yeah. They're not allowed to have more than $2,000 worth of assets. If they do,
there's a reduction
reduction of their benefits. In fact, it's such a catch-22 because you want your child and your family member to be a productive member of society, right? I mean, that's what I told my kids. Be productive members of society. Plan and yes, but be productive members of society. So for him to get a job, when he has a job, it does drastically reduce the benefits he receives from the federal government, from the state government. He's no longer eligible for these items. And the problem is that he's only working 3 days a week for 2 hours each. Or, you know, the amount of time they're allowed to work or able to work is very minimal.
Right.
So if someone were to say to me, you know, Derek really should just get a job and work. Well, especially right now, that diagnosis is going to prohibit that. It's going to not allow him to do what he would normally be able to do. So there's got to be a balance in it. You have to find the balance, but the only way to find the balance is by knowing what those parameters are. So making sure that you're planning, making sure that you're chatting with someone you need your professionals around you. I'm a financial professional. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a special needs attorney. I am not any of those things. So I can give you guidance and give you a goal on what needs to come next and things that you need to consider, like housing and care support, and the transportation. How are you going to even get from point A to point B? Can you take an Uber? Can you not take an Uber? Can you, I mean, some can, some can't, you know, and then it's just trying to create an entire plan without a bunch of Band-Aids, right? You want to create an entire well-crafted cast or form for them to live within comfortably and safely, but you don't want to have to always constantly put Band-Aids all over it because you're trying to fill holes. So it's very important to have a whole comprehensive conversation with multiple people. You know, the beneficiary, the trustee, the beneficiary. If you're leaving it to somebody else, you need to have a special needs attorney. You need to have your CPA. You need to have everybody on the same page. And that only happens if you do a lot of planning ahead of time.
A lot of planning, a lot of communication, a lot of check-ins. Look, you've got your two other children that are named or tag teamed, but what if life happened to them? And then, right? So it's constant. Yes. It's going to be a constant ball in the air for you and your family. Yeah. And then as a financial planner, do you find that this is a common theme, whether they special needs person in their family or not, but that as a financial planner, where do you see most families are challenged in doing this pre-planning?
A lot of people make mistakes when it comes to their trusts, when it comes to thinking that their person that that said that they would take care of them is going to foot that bill. There's really no way. It's broad strokes. It's about $18,000 more annually to take care of somebody with special needs, regardless of whatever else they end up with. So regardless of their grants or their monies or their whatever that they're allowed to receive and their aid that they're receiving. Your own family members. So if my daughter were to take custody of him and help him and help him thrive, she would be expected. I mean, would I expect her to take $18,000 out of her pocket every year to help just Derek? Not alone. She has another daughter. She has 2 other daughters. She has, I mean,
her own life.
They have their own life, their own thoughts and their own needs and what they were originally planning. And yes, they did plan on having Derek move in with them, but as a functioning adult, not as somebody who might have Alzheimer's and might not be able to do anything because they'd sit on the couch.
Well, and that's not all Alzheimer patients are as compliant, right?
Yes. And that is the unfortunate part. So what I see as being the biggest problems and the biggest conflicts are irrevocable trusts. People a lot of time think that irrevocable trusts are the same as any other trust. They're not. The special needs trusts are very different than regular trusts, and you need to have somebody who specializes in special needs trusts.
So let's stop there. So special needs trust. So if someone has a special needs child or family member, what kind of questions should they be asking? Is it an estate attorney they're looking for, or an estate attorney that specializes in special needs trust?
Yeah, it's a will and trust lawyer. It's an attorney who focuses and specializes specifically in trusts and wills, and primarily so an estate attorney, estate planning attorney. But you really want to ask how much experience they have with special needs trusts.
What are some questions they should be asking?
Well, number one, how often do you place a special needs trust? What have been the outcomes of some of your trusts? How often do you revise or advise people to change their special needs trusts? Because their needs, as you can see, could change on a monthly basis. So you need to be much more in contact with your estate planning special needs trust attorney than you would a typical lawyer or attorney. You want to make sure that you are constantly making them aware of any changes. And that can feel like you are overburdening or overwhelming those people, but that is actually, you need to make sure that they're okay with that. That's part of the question is, are you comfortable meeting more often? And you want to really, really trust this person because they're literally holding your special needs person's life in your hands.
So let me ask you, you've asked your children to do this, but what about for people who don't have extended family? Do you, as a professional, would you recommend using like a professional fiduciary, or what are the other options that people could have in setting up guardianship for a special needs person?
Yeah. That's a really tricky line that is walked. There is no clear-cut answer, and it's different for every single family. Their trustee would normally be the person that would be taking over that role, the guardianship role. And if that's, a trusted family friend, if it's a priest, if it's the attorney themselves, there are times when those are the only options. That's a good question of whether or not I would say that there's no one's going to take care of your child like you are. So it's knowing what you are personally going to be comfortable with. and then determining how to make that happen.
So, as a financial planner, how do you're trying to plan for your special needs child. You have two other children. You have your own aging process you're about to go through. You've got so many balls in place. As a financial planner, if you came to you, if you were your own client, right? How do you have those conversations, and how do you start planning financially, knowing that you have this heavy weighted, I'm trying to find a loving, situation.
Mm-hmm. You have to, I think you do it well with your business, Niki. I think you take yourself out of the equation as best you can. You take the emotions out of the equation. You put it out in black and white, and then you connect the pieces. And you put one piece in place, see if it still makes sense. Put another piece in place, see if it still makes sense. And you build that foundation so that your house grows nice and strong. And then you revisit it. You maybe have to do some remodels. You might have to do some, but you're constantly going back to the building blocks and the foundationary pieces, because without them, your house is going to crumble. And emotion does that. There is a time and a place for emotion, but when it comes to, and that's what can hinder you from actually moving forward. I experienced a little of that myself this week, where I was just like feeling so stuck that I just couldn't even begin to move forward because there was so much going on. I'm like, oh, I'm never, ever going to be able to do this.
Sometimes it's just one day at a time.
Yeah. So
some days it's 1 hour at a time.
That is right. So you just have to step back,
right?
Take yourself out of the equation, review what would happen if this was somebody I didn't know, I didn't have any affection for, anything for, besides respect, and see how we can help them move forward. And so you have to kind of look at yourself that way too.
Right. My gosh, you are on a journey, both personally and professionally, and I just appreciate all the information you were able to share with us. If there's a couple takeaways that our listeners should start thinking about and maybe take action on, what would your advice be?
The first thing I would say is to take stock of where you're at. Make sure that you really check in and focus and learn the regulations and the laws of your state.
State specific, very state specific.
Make sure that you are aware of what's happening in your state and what's allowed, what's not allowed. And then research, interview whomever you find to help you with your estate planning, with your special needs trust. Interview them. You have every right to ask them more questions than they will ever ask you. Because if that person is not the right person for you, move on.
Next.
Yeah.
And with that, thank you so much. And if people wanted to reach out to you and have an ongoing conversation, best place to find you?
I am on LinkedIn. It's linkedin.juliehoffman or /Julie Hoffman-Hogan. And I am at I'm at New York Life as well. So I am New York Life. If you look up New York Life and Julie Hoffman-Hogan, you'll find my website.
And New York Life, that is the, for those that don't, you want to talk a little bit about New York Life?
New York Life is an insurance company that's been around for a gazillion years, 175 plus years. We will be around for 175 to 200 more longer. We're not going anywhere. I might go somewhere, but they're not going anywhere. We also we're a full financial planning company. We do holistic planning. So it's not just insurance and insurance sales. It is much more than that. It is about caring for you as a person and making sure that we find the right plan for you to move forward.
Well, knowing what your situation is, I would think you know all the ins and outs and a good listener of people's, challenges, life challenges, because to understand what the challenge is currently and what could be potentially, that's how you plan.
Exactly. Finding that you want to have foresight to know what the hindsight should have been. But know it beforehand.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. We're wishing you and your family many thoughts, and you certainly have the strength. So hopefully you're leaning on your community, because it does take a village. And with that,
it does. Yes. Thank you very much, Niki, for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Oh, welcome. Mine too. Take care.
You too.
Thank you for listening to the Digital Legacy Podcast, where we talk about death and dying in the digital age. I hope this conversation inspired you to take control and plan for the inevitable to protect yourself and those you leave behind. Don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter at digitallegacypodcast.com. Remember, life is full of surprises. What happens after you die shouldn't be. So keep your passwords safe and your playbook up to date.